Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have just sat through the speech, almost 16 minutes, of President Cyril Ramaphosa delivering the closing remarks of the NEC's emergency economic meeting. I have sat through it so that you don't have to. Originally, I thought I will play you his answers. The problem is that every single answer is so long that you guys would be very angry with me and most of you would stop watching. I know that most of you find it very annoying to listen to that man, and I do not blame you for that. I have listened to the whole thing. I have done a bit of research on every of the sort of suggestions that they have. So I'm going to run you through everything that was discussed. It starts off with the ANC confirming their commitment to BEE and inclusive economic transformation. Now, right at the start of that, and by the way, he is talking about BBBEE, broad-based Black economic empowerment. That really is the thing that has destroyed the South African economy. And the reason for it is it puts race at the forefront of everything that you do. So before you can do anything else, you have to first care about the race of the person that you are trying to help, the person that you're trying to employ, the way that you approach the business sector of things. So that is sort of confirmed at the start of it. It starts off with that. Okay, so it starts by praising Eskom's performance, saying that Eskom is doing better than ever before. They have added record numbers of capacity, and that is to some extent true, except when you look at the energy availability factor of Eskom, it is still well below what it's supposed to be. The aim is to be around 70% energy availability. It is currently sat at 62.66%. He praised Eskom because load shedding has ended. When most analysts agree, the only reason we don't have load shedding is because we have no economic growth. There are no new factories opening up. In fact, most of the factories are closing down, not opening back up. And so there is just reduced demand. Because fundamentally, our energy availability factor is in the dump. And it is probably going to go lower because we will have breakdowns once again. There's also been a lot of stories about Eskom already blowing all of its budget for 2025 on diesel within the first few months of 2025. So we're burning diesel at a massive rate just to try and keep up. At some point, that money's going to run out. But never mind that. He praised them. Then he also praised Transnet for their steady stabilization and steady but slow improvement, I guess you could say, even though it has not been improved. There are no trains running at the moment in South Africa of any sort of note. There are no new tracks being laid down. He did say later that's one of their plans is to bring more private sector sort of competition to railway. But really, you'll find that this plan has very little to do with the private sector, and that really is one of the biggest problems. But okay, so their first plan is to use electricity tariffs for economic growth. And by electricity tariffs, of course, they're not talking about what you and I pay, but rather what factories and businesses pay. When you run a factory, there are special tariffs that you're going to pay on the electricity that you use. Yes, you're going to get a lower, technically, electricity price, but you are going to pay a lot more in tariffs. These tariffs they now want to use to expand the grid, build out infrastructure, and, well, that's it apparently. Just better transmission. Then they want to accelerate freight and logistics with another sort of mention here of privatization. The problem, of course, is that, and you'll see as we go through all of this, the only SOE currently in South Africa that works is OpenServe or Telkom. And the only reason Telkom is actually making money is because Telkom has competition. It was forced to either start competing and become better or close down. That's the only way that you're going to save any of this. But okay, so they don't actually, he goes into very little in terms of how they're going to do this, except for with Transnet, more of the same because it is steadily improving. So they'll just keep doing that, I guess. And they're going to try and accelerate it, even though it's probably not going to happen, but they did mention that they're going to make private companies, or allow private companies at least, to run parts of the railway and the logistics side of South Africa. Then they want to rebuild the chrome and manganese industries in South Africa. They're going to do this in a number of ways. The first is to apply defensive tariffs on import dumping. This is countries like China that have a lot of it, that just dumps it in a country and basically destroys the local industry. These industries will now be tariffed to hell and back in order to stop this dumping from actually occurring. Then he mentioned something that I genuinely don't know what he's thinking. Export tariffs on chrome and manganese. Now, if he's talking about export tariffs insofar as what other countries are charging us to sell in their countries, and they're trying to come up with trade deals in order to help these countries or get these countries to lower the tariffs on our imports, that's great, right? Go for it. I don't think that's what he's talking about. I think what he's actually talking about is literally export tariffs. So if mines or if factories want to export chrome or manganese, there's going to be tariffs that's going to be charged on that, or in other words, just extra taxes to actually export, which actually always has the opposite of the effect that you think. You think we're going to have a lot more money because we're going to be able to use those taxes to build more mines and build more industry. The problem is that it kills exports. Because in most countries in the world, you already have to pay a local tariff, plus all of the logistics and the freight and all the shipping that is involved in getting your goods to that country. Now you also have to pay a tax on top of all of that, which basically just kills the ability to compete in the rest of the world. And then finally, they're going to expand alloy and battery production. No idea how they're going to do that. That's just what he said. Then they're going to improve the capacity of the state to manage major projects. And this is where we get it really into. There's a number of new units that's going to be established as part of their economic saving plan. But effectively, all this means is bigger government. There's going to be a new cross-government unit that will be established that allow for all of the sectors of government to work together to build massive projects. Then you have driving local economic development and investment in infrastructure. This, of course, they're not going to do by allowing provinces more freedom in how they approach their economies, or maybe giving provinces the ability to sort of change the way they apply taxes. No. The way they're going to do this is with another government unit that will be established to ensure that all local provinces are in alignment with the national government's economic plan. Because effectively, just listening to what he's talking about here, they seem to want to build almost like every sort of township and small town and the like will have a specific economic activity that it's going to focus on. So effectively, they want to say to Soweto, you guys are just going to focus on textiles. You're not going to focus on anything else. You're all just going to make clothes. And then they're going to say to another township, well, you guys are going to make shoes. And so they're going to basically turn every sector or every town and every township into one economic hub that just does one thing and sort of does this one thing, hopefully, well, although that never actually works. You can go look at Soviet Russia as well as communist China. You'll find the exact same thing there. But there's going to be units for this now. Then they want to focus on labor activation initiatives. No idea what that means, because effectively it's not labor in terms of creating more jobs. No, they want to scale up the presidential employment stimulus. For those of you that don't know what that is, that was the president announcing that they're going to employ teachers straight from the fiscus. So the government will effectively pay young people to become assistant teachers. And they now want to expand that to even more people. He used the word aggressively expand that. Right. So basically just use more taxpayer money. Remember that tax base that is shrinking. We have now fewer than 7 million people in South Africa actually paying all of the tax. And income tax in South Africa makes up around 60+% of the total budget. Yes, that economic tax base that is shrinking will now be taxed even harder to create false jobs, because every job that the government creates is a false job. In order for the government to create a job, the government has to steal money from a person employed not with the government in order to pay the government employee. And thanks to the fact that the government takes a chunk of the check, as you guys already know, because I've made videos on this, for every 1 rand that the government gets in actual in taxes. The government spends around 1 rand 30 on the economy, but only 27 cent, I think, is actually spent on services. The rest of it, the vast majority of it, is spent on salaries and government handouts. People who live on social security, basically in South Africa. That's it. So more than 80% of the total money that the government spends is not on services, not on providing services, but on paying government employees, because I view people who don't work and get a check from the government as just an extension of a government employee. But anyways, they're going to do that even more now. Then you have the Expand and Assist SMME creation and development, where they're going to come up with ways to get the banks of South Africa to give these people more loans for small businesses, which is actually one of the few things here where I agree on. I think that's a good thing. Although I would say the argument here, the way you want to fix that is actually creating more banks, not by just getting the big banks to compete. We need community banks in this country. Big banks want to lend to big people. Think about it this way. If you go to ABSA and you borrow 100,000 Rand to start your own business, do you think ABSA really cares about you when ABSA has another client that is borrowing 1 billion in order to start a business? ABSA cares about the guy that wants 1 billion, right? They don't really care about you. You're just there. You're in the way, and they kind of have to help you because the government says so. So they're going to make it as hard as possible to help you. We need community banks. A bank that exists in Soweto only to serve the people of Soweto. So if you want to start a business, a spaza shop or something in Soweto, this bank will gladly help you, because if you start to make money, they're going to get money, right? So we need more banks in this country, but they didn't say anything about that. Then they want to enable growth of provincial economies. Again, no way, like they don't go into detail on how they want to do it, except for the fact that it's going to be completely centralized planning with localized targets aligned with the planning. Whatever that means. Accelerate the diversification of trade partners. They have now seemingly accepted the fact that they're not going to be able to appease America. And the reason for it is they will not let go of black economic empowerment. They will not let go of employment equity. They will not let go of the mandatory 30%. And they will not criticize the singing of the Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer song, because they want to kill Boers and they want to kill farmers, but they don't want to say that they want to do that. So they like when other people say it instead. And they don't obviously want to break friendships with Iran, Russia, or China. So effectively, they're just going to try and look for other people to trade with instead, even though they have tried for the last few months, and there simply isn't anyone else that can pick up the slack. There's no other country in the world that can take what America takes. If you lose America, you effectively have lost it. But they did say that they want to look at the impact of tariff and non-tariff barriers in South Africa. So on that front, they're willing to meet Donald Trump. But the problem is Donald Trump has other demands, and they're not willing to meet those other demands. So we're going to lose America effectively as a trading partner. One of the things that basically bothered me quite a lot here was when he said that they want to look at the effectiveness of the budget and macroeconomic coordination, and they effectively want to go after the investment of pension funds to be able to direct pension funds to invest where they think it is most needed. That's never good. Never good. But anyways, okay, so apart from that, there's going to be a new economic war room that will be established within the presidency, so more government people working in the government. Merit-based appointments across all government institutions. That's right. He actually did say that they want to remove factionalized political influence in SOEs as well as in the government in general, and they want to move to merit-based institutional employment. Here's the thing. At the start, he affirmed BEE, employment equity, and affirmative action. This means that any merit-based employment that they want to look at isn't merit-based, because it's merit-based only after the race of the person has been taken into account. So you're still not going to necessarily end up, not saying you're going to end up with necessarily bad people, because there's plenty of black people that are perfectly capable of doing the job, But if you don't have enough black people perfectly capable of doing the job, you're not going to be able to hire a white person to do the job, because you still have to adhere to employment equity and affirmative action and broad-based economic empowerment, black economic empowerment. So all of that still stands, but now they just want them to look for educated and well-trained black people instead of looking at cadres, even though they did affirm that they want to professionalize cadre employment. So they just want to turn all of the cadres into professionals by spending government taxpayer money on retraining and retooling these professional cadres to now become professional cadres, but professional workers as cadres. It's very confusing. I understand. Never mind. I get it. Wishes to insulate all public holdings from factional politics. Rebuild and reform SOEs to be effective. Of course, nothing said about the private sector and the private sector actually being able to compete with any of these companies. They're going to commit to lifestyle audits for all public officials, which will probably do something to stem some of the corruption. He praised the SIU for making progress against corruption. Of course, what you need to understand here is that the government, the only people that are convicted and gone after for corruption are the people that the ANC okay. If you are a minister, if you're influential, the SIU will not come after you because you are protected by Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC. So they only go after the people that have fallen out of favor with the ANC. And then lastly, and perhaps the biggest one here, is social contracts that are needed. Effectively, what that means is the government wants private businesses to basically pay for all of the things that the government wants to do, including paying to create their own competition that can then eventually compete against them. That's what a social contract means. So effectively, the government just wants to find a new way of getting even more money out of the people. They've already said that they're looking at introducing a 3% optional tax. So companies won't be forced to pay the 3% tax. But if they do, it'll be very helpful. How long do you think it will take before that mandatory, that optional tax becomes mandatory, where companies will just be forced to pay 3% because that's supposed to go into the 100 billion or whatever rand fund for economic transformation, the transformation fund. That is his entire speech. It took a while to get through it because, well, he said a lot of nonsense things that I had to fact check and double check in order to make sure that I actually understand what the hell this man is talking about. Ultimately, guys, this boils down to they have a number of words that sound good, but there is no plan. These are just headlines. They're not plans, because he has not gone into detail about what any of these plans actually consist of. How are you going to get from point A to point B to point C to point D? It's not enough to just say this is point A and this is point F, because this is all this is. They've given you point F, and you sort of understand that there's going to be an A, B, C, D, E. But they haven't given you A, B, C, D, E, and so there's an A, B, C, D, E. Maybe they'll give you F later. There's no promise of any of that. So we don't have a plan yet. They call it their action plan, but right now it is just a collection of headlines with no actual sort of information on what it will take to get to the promised land. We only have the name of the promised land, no map. Anyways, as always, hit the like if you like, the dislike if you didn't. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of our president's economic action plan. I would love to read your thoughts in the comment section. Then a massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons as well as the YouTube channel members for your continued support on this channel. My plans are laid out and you can watch the videos on that. Just click the link in the description down below or hit the join button right below this video. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, question everything. And I'll see all of you in the next one. Peace.